Good morning, how are you?
The British election campaign is now in full swing. We have the Labour Party manifesto and now the Conservative Party's manifesto. Here with me is Janan Ganesh, the FT's political commentator. Now, Janan, the Conservatives seem to have changed their whole personality. They're talking about spending, not austerity. What's going on?
I think they're trying to force a poll surge, which they thought would happen by now, and it hasn't. And so they're coming up with ever more dramatic and retail-friendly policies to try and generate that. It's interesting that in their manifesto today, they seem to be committing to outspending Labour, not only on the NHS, which they kind of trailed last week, but also on childcare. So that the top notes of the Tory campaign, which you would have expected to be all about fiscal discipline, finishing the job of eliminating the deficit, are actually all about public services and giving people a concrete reason to vote for them.
So it's a little bit like Reagan's Morning in America in 1984. But of course, in 1984, the recovery was well underway, whereas the recovery in Britain is rather patchy. It's rather a joyless recovery.
It is, and the Conservatives will quote any number of statistics to say actually the recovery is geographically quite even across the country. It's beginning to feed through into household budgets. But it doesn't transfer into voting intention opinion polls. It has transferred into some of the sub-questions in the polls, like do you feel confident about the direction the country is heading in and your own personal finances? But none of it matters electorally until the Conservatives pull ahead by 3 or 4 points in the opinion polls, which is yet to happen. So they're really trying to force the issue. And my concern is that the price you pay is encouraging the public to believe that austerity is over. And now all we're doing is sharing the proceeds of growth, hence more childcare, more NHS, the Labour Party promising to cut tuition fees. It feels like we're running the 2020 election in 2015, a post-austerity election at a time that actually we've got plenty of austerity left to go.
Do you think voters in Britain now, though, have a clear choice between a party, the Labour Party, which is instinctively interventionist on matters like energy policy, housing, banking, with perhaps more heavy levy or other measures, and the Conservative Party, which has somewhat abandoned austerity, or at least the talk thereof?
There's a huge difference when it comes to attitudes towards the market. And even if the Conservatives have softened their position on austerity and are talking about all these spending pledges, they're pro-market, they believe in the price mechanism, the intersection of demand and supply. Whereas Labour, over the past few years under Ed Miliband, have become a bit more critical of that. And so you've seen not just the energy price intervention, but also versions of rent control that they're flirting with.
And also on the minimum wage, they want to raise that, which is part of their inequality.
Exactly, much higher minimum wage much sooner than people were expecting. So these are fairly direct interventions in the market of the kind that Labour have forsworn for about a generation, really. It goes back to the early 80s and 1970s, the last time they tried this. Now, back then, it was radioactive electorally. But Ed Miliband's calculation, which may turn out to be correct, is that the public has changed its position a little bit. The financial crash has disillusioned them when it comes to their views of the market. And so they're more willing to contemplate government interventions to achieve more social justice.
But at the same time, the Labour Party at least have committed in words to fiscal responsibility, talking about balancing the books by the end of the next Parliament.
Yeah, they say none of their commitments in their manifesto require more borrowing, although the caveat is if all their growth assumptions are correct. The big fiscal difference between the two parties is really about should you balance just the current fiscal budget, which is what Labour want to do, or the overall fiscal budget, which includes capital, which is what the Conservatives want to do. And it's probably the biggest difference between the two main parties on fiscal policy for quite a while. And theoretically, the line of attack that the Tories think that has opened up for them is that they can say that theoretically Labour have no formal commitment to balancing the overall budget ever, and so they can borrow indefinitely and get away with it and still be consistent with their policy.
So, Janan, I'm going to put you on the spot. We've seen the Labour Party and the Conservatives offer their best shot this week in terms of manifestos. Do you think that this is going to shift the polls?
Not the manifestos. I think there still will be a big shift in the polls, but it'll be very, very late, perhaps so late that it won't show up in the opinion polls before May the 7th itself.
Cliffhanger. Thanks, Janan.